You can start now.
Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the first episode of the WTO Trade Dialogues on Food in 2025, entitled AgTech and Global Trade, Bridging the Future of Agriculture. It's my pleasure to host today's session, and I extend a warm welcome to our esteemed panelists and to our viewers who are joining us from across the globe. My name is Doa Abdelmotal. I'm Senior Counselor in the WTO Agriculture and Commodities Division, and I'll be moderating today's debate. I'll be putting 2 rounds of questions to our panelists, after which I'll be opening the floor to questions from you, the viewers. Viewers can send questions to dialogues@wto.org. I'd like this to be as participatory as possible, so do send in your questions. I have my iPad next to me and a team working behind me to go through everything that you will be sending in. I'd like to begin by providing some context for today's episode. In agriculture, we're faced with a stark paradox. While food production globally has reached record levels, over 730 million people have gone to bed hungry in 2023, according to the FAO's latest data. And this means that 1 in 11 people globally and 1 in 5 people in Africa is going to bed hungry. So these are alarming statistics. Moreover, we also know that global population is expected to reach 10 billion by the year 2050. So 2 billion more than today, which will mean that food demand will inevitably grow. There's an urgent need, clearly, to address this challenge. But scaling up food production using current farming methods is both resource-intensive and inefficient. Solutions are clearly needed, including AgTech solutions, which are the subject of this dialogue. International trade plays a critical role in the global food system. Today, 25% of food production goes into international trade, feeding 1 in every 6 people on our planet. But agricultural technology needs to travel across the globe along with food more than ever before. The AgTech market has been experiencing significant growth, with its value standing at approximately $11 billion in 2021, and it is projected to more than double by 2025. So some industry statistics to give context to this discussion before we start. One of the most heavily traded segments within AgTech is precision farming equipment, which includes GPS-guided tractors, variable rate technology for fertilizer application, and yield monitoring systems. The global market for precision farming was valued at $7 billion in 2021 and is expected to reach $16 billion by 2027. Another significant area is agricultural robotics, encompassing automated harvesters, drones for field analysis, and robotic weeders. The market for agricultural robots was valued at $5 billion in 2020 and is projected to grow to $21 billion by 2025. Additionally, smart irrigation systems, which utilize sensors and the Internet of Things devices to optimize water usage, are increasingly being used. The smart irrigation market was valued at $1 billion in 2020 and is expected to double by 2025. The goal of today's trade dialogue on food is to identify the technologies that are critical to the future of food systems, understand where they are produced, and examine the obstacles to international trade in these technologies and more generally to their dissemination. So please let me, without further ado, introduce our distinguished panel to you. Adam Stuve is a global lead for agri-commodities in the International Finance Corporation. Hello, Adam.
Hi,
Hello.
good afternoon or good morning, good evening, wherever you may be.
Thank you. Hadar Sutovsky is Vice President for Corporate Investments, ICL Group, and General Manager of ICL Planet Startup Hub. Hello, Hadar. welcome.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to this discussion.
Thank you. Shenggen Fan, Chair and Professor and Dean of the Academy of Global Food Economics and Policy in China Agricultural University. Hello, Shenggen.
Hi, Juha. Hi, everybody. Looking forward to a very active discussions here.
Thank you. Landry Signé, Senior Fellow, Global Economy and Development, Africa Growth Initiative at the Brookings Institution, as well as Executive Director of the Thunderbird School of Global Management. Hello, Landry.
Hello, thank you so much for having me, and hello, everyone.
And last but absolutely not least, a good friend of the trading system, Shir Slutsky, Deputy Permanent Representative of Israel to the World Trade Organization. Hello, Shir.
Hello, Doa. Good afternoon. Thank you very much for having me.
So let me open the first round of questions. Hadar, I'd like to start with you. As VP of Corporate Investments at ICL Planet Startup Hub, your organization accelerates innovation in the agri-food ecosystem. In your view, what are the most transformative agricultural technologies today? And how can startups and global innovators collaborate to scale up these solutions?
Well, that's a great question, I think, to kick off all this discussion. So just to give you a flavor of what we do, ICL Planet Startup Hub, that's the corporate investment arm of ICL. If you are familiar with ICL, so ICL is a global mineral company, and my job is to be an agent of change. So your question is right up my alley. In 2025, I look at, let me focus on 3 key trends that I believe will have the most significant impact this year, and will, let's say, the advancement of these key trends will bring us or drive significant changes, first in sustainability, second in efficiency, and third, but most important, long-term industry transformation. Now, when I look at the trends that are coming and looking at back at the passing years, which were not so easy, I think the next years will focus on, first of all, regenerative agriculture. So people say regen ag. What kind of solutions do we see in this kind of category? Well, mostly it's around soil health. We are looking at soil monitoring and analytics. Sometimes platforms are driven by AI or not. A lot of sensors and networks that are allowing farmers to make precision-based decisions on how to enhance their productivity and while minimizing their inputs. Other kinds of technologies that are related to this trend, and this trend is just getting more and more recognized as not only good practices in very niche agriculture, rural places, but now it's gaining more and more traction to be common practices around all the mainstream agriculture. So I talked about monitoring and analytics. There's regenerative robotics and automation. A lot of automation is getting into machinery that supports soil restoration, carbon sequestration, and also minimizing the labor costs and disruption. Another driver here is all the carbon markets, and probably all of you have heard about it. Another technology that is part of regen ag is microbials, microbial-based biostimulants, any kind of biosimulation innovation that can be under this technology title. So biological solutions as a whole can enrich soil fertility, can boost crop resilience. Me, myself, and my group, we are really highly invested in these kind of practices and these kind of new developments. I think this will drive the next generation of specialty inputs, and it's not only me, it's all the top tier agriculture companies and other regen ag platforms. So that's on the side of agriculture. Now it's one value chain, agriculture and food, right? So let me, I will tap into the second one, which in my thought, it's very important, which is all the evolution around the alternative protein sector. And we are now approaching the age of plant-based 3.0. So I don't know if all of you were tracking the changes in the all alternative protein sector, but the alternative industry is entering now a new phase of innovation. While the early plant-based was practically imitating meat, and meat alternative have gained traction, there were always challenges that are related to taste, to texture, to nutrition, to sustainability. And this is what driving the need all alongside with, of course, customers' preferences to the next generation of solution. So the evolution is often referred to as plant-based 3.0. Why? Because it leverages not only imitating meat, but leverages agri-food innovation and agri-food technologies to create products that go beyond imitation. What do I mean? I mean delivering enhanced nutritional value, improved sensory experiences, and more sustainable production footprint. So this is what drives everything here. And we are looking at nutrient optimization and better health benefit in each ingredient and each food production. We are looking at companies that are actually looking at sustainability matrices in order to surpass the previous iterations. And of course, looking at enhancing the taste and the texture to technologies like precision fermentation, et cetera. But what's the business case behind that? I mean, embracing plant-based 3.0, the industry will move beyond the simple meat analogs, okay? It's not just the picture you are imagining of the hamburger, but we are looking at creating smarter, healthier, and a lot more sustainable protein solutions, okay? Low carbon, regenerative crop sourcing, et cetera. So I think these are the two, let's say, agri and food trends that I see. And in the middle, or let's say embracing both of these, is the umbrella of all the business of agri-food AI. And agri-food AI can span across many fields of expertise along this value chain. I will just name few because I don't want to, capture the whole time of everybody. But if we look at agriculture with AI, you can analyze so many data sets that you can actually do predictive analytics on weather, on soil, on crop management. And if you look at the other side, at food, you can then use AI in order to do discovery and R&D of food ingredients. You can actually predict sensory experience. You can actually predict if this plant-based ingredient could be a gelling factor, a texturizing factor, a shelf life extension factor. So reducing time to market, reducing labor, increasing the amount of data that you can process can actually take agri-food into the next level, into the next stage. And with that, I will summarize. I talked about 3 trends: regenerative agriculture, plant-based protein 3.0, and AI-based agri-food technologies.
Wow, thank you so much for that. Very exciting, and clearly to all our viewers, crystal clear that this is an incredible transformation of agriculture, a transformation of the way we do agriculture and what you've described as regenerative ag. So looking at soil health, robotics, automation, etc. But also incredible innovation in what we're eating and what will be on our plate. So plant-based 3.0, as you've put it, which goes beyond creating simple analogs, as you have said, looking at smarter and healthier choices. And then, of course, agri-food AI, and that's incredibly exciting. And I love what you said about predicting the sensory experience. So it goes very, very far potentially. With that, let me turn to the IFC, Adam. The IFC plays a key role in financing agricultural projects worldwide. Can you share with us the critical ag technologies that IFC focuses on disseminating, and what are the main barriers to financing these innovations, particularly for smallholder farmers?
Okay, sure. Thanks for the question. Let me start out with just a point of orientation about IFC's agribusiness and agri-food system related portfolio. It stands at about $7 billion, and this consists of more than 50 investments, which are market terms, with private sector players, both from developing countries as well as multinational companies, but always for their operations in emerging markets. And these investments are taking the form of debt, equity, quasi-equity, guarantees. And one of the things is it's also a worldwide portfolio, at least across all of the emerging and transition economies around the world. Together with the World Bank Group institutions, we have a mandate to increase our agri-finance and agribusiness commitments to $9 billion annually by 2030. And AgTech is a key pillar to help us achieve this target, while also creating much more impact in and around agri-food systems. And when I refer to AgTech in this sense as an investment target for us, it's really in two different dimensions. So on the one hand, we are investing in the startup companies that are creating and developing the next generation of technology and innovations. And some of these applications will be largely in emerging markets, but one of the things about AgTech is generally the applications are applicable across different types of economies. The other pillar I'm mentioning when I talk about IFC's investment in AgTech is we're also simultaneously helping our clients in emerging markets countries finance their investments in technologies that are deployable today and are being deployed at scale. And so whether it's biodigesters to produce methane from manure, or whether it's microirrigation, these are the types of investments we're helping a lot of our clients invest in for their own operations. And in terms of IFC's investments in AgTech, we're supporting a range of technologies and business models. So from those that embrace access to finance, to those that foster productivity, climate resilience, supply chain efficiency. And so these technologies are not only addressing operational pain points of agribusinesses, but they're also addressing many of the challenges faced day to day by smallholder farmers. And it's going to help improve the environmental as well as economic sustainability of smallholder farming. Some of these investments will also pave the way for greater financial inclusion, including in hard to reach rural areas, which are sometimes very, very remote. So IFC's approach centers on investment in venture stage companies that are pioneering disruptive business models or innovating in key technology pillars and IoT sensors, remotes, or let's say remote sensing solutions, biotech, seeds, for example, which will help farmers create more resilience in their operations against agents and climate change. And the other thing that we're working on in terms of the ecosystem around AgTech is, of course, it overlaps a lot with fintech. And so in this space, we're helping support digital financial services and transaction platforms that provide financing for agricultural inputs, insurance solutions, data-driven credit scoring models. So these are platforms that can analyze farmers' financial habits to expand their credit access, while digital marketplaces will facilitate these farmers' direct access to markets, helping them achieve better and fairer prices. So if I were to talk a little bit about some examples of IFC's investments in AgTech, I think I want to start framing this part of the answer with the note that just in the year past, 2024, globally, an estimated $314 billion was raised in venture capital across the entire range of sectors and applications. But of that $314 billion, only about 5.7 went into AgTech ventures anywhere on the planet. So it's only about 1.8% of total venture capital was going for AgTech. So within that, it's just a relative trickle of funding that's going to venture capital for AgTechs in emerging market countries. And so with that said, I will point out that IFC, the work we do is with venture stage companies that are either in emerging markets or that have immediate applications to emerging market settings. And we make either direct investments in a small number of selected AgTech companies, or we also invest through specialized fund managers that have developed a track record for successful investments in AgTech investing in emerging markets. And to use an example of one of our direct investments, it would be AgroStar in India. It's an AgTech company that's leveraging AI-driven agronomic advisory, digital inputs, and retail expansion to support smallholder farmers. It's technology that's helping these farmers access higher quality seeds and fertilizers, and also receive AI-powered crop management advice and connect with buyers through the digital marketplace that it's established. Another example is IFC's invested in agri-insurance. And so there's a company called Pula, which designs and innovates insurance and digital marketplaces to help smallholder farmers manage risks and improve their incomes. Pula has been instrumental in providing agricultural insurance programs in about 22 countries, so protecting more than 15 million smallholder farmers against climate risks. The company leverages advanced technologies, including artificial intelligence, mobile-based technology. It also leverages remote sensing so that it can develop tailored insurance solutions that are both scalable and efficient. And then the last example I'll use is an example of an investment we make through a specialized venture fund manager. This one is Omnivore in India. And so Omnivore focuses on agri-food, life sciences, rural fintech, and climate-smart agriculture. So it's backing the startup companies that enhance productivity, resilience, and sustainability. Now, given that Indian agriculture is dominated by smallholder farmers, the near-term success of most of these investee companies of the fund is dominated by the need to address immediate needs of smallholder farmers. And then if you think about the longer-term growth trajectory, the ambition of many of these companies, how are they going to grow? Some of it will be needing to expand beyond the borders of India. And this is where there'll be immediate applications for the smallholder agriculture that exists in a lot of emerging markets. And so this is one of the most important ways to ensure that AgTech that's appropriate for smallholders is in the development stage, it's in the commercialization stage, and we'll be there also to help bring it full circle. And so when that technology is fully deployable at scale, we'll have clients in emerging market countries that are looking to acquire it, and that's where we'll close the circle, helping those clients acquire some of these proven technologies. So having drawn that circle of the investments we make around this space, I'll hand back the floor.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Adam. Very exciting, all the work you do, and very interesting, of course, the crucial link between AgTech and, as you said, fintech. So innovative financial solutions, innovative insurance, innovative ways of raising capital, and innovative ways of reaching the smallholder farmer and allowing the smallholder farmer to grow and to cross international borders. So a crucial link there, and that's why we wanted the IFC in this webinar, absolutely. Shingen, let me turn to you. China represents 17% of global population, and it continues to be the world's largest food importing country. but today it's also a major innovator in agricultural technology. What are the technologies that are in the lead to transform China's very own agricultural production and food security, and which of these are homegrown?
Well, thank you, Juha. Well, my first point is the trade continues to be very critical to ensure everybody access to healthy, nutritious food. So let's make sure that the trade will remain to be open, transparent, and obviously inclusive. Now, for China, I came back to China about 5 years ago, after working for IPRI for 25 years, and I observed rapid dynamic transformation in technologies. So broadly speaking, 3 categories of technologies. The first is digital, AI, precision, agricultural or food system transformation. So yes, the GPS, Beidou guided tractors, drones, all kinds of machines, automated, not just in production, the whole food system. So, and as you know, the recent release of DeepSeek, that really gave a great opportunity for all these agricultural food companies to really use AI to further transform the food system. So, for example, the e-commerce in China, obviously guided by all these sort of algorithm behind the AI. Just for 2023, more than 600 billion Chinese agricultural products were traded through e-commerce platforms. I think in 2024, I don't have the figure for 2024. That number probably is much bigger than the level in 2023. So I think Adam mentioned that the smallholders have to benefit from that. Yes, absolutely. So e-commerce really build a bridge between millions and millions of smallholders with the sort of affluent urban citizens. So yes, smallholders benefit from that, either through their direct sales or through the platform in their village, or through certain aggregators. And then the urban consumers benefit through its high quality, traceable food agriculture products. So that's the digital AI revolution. The second one is biotechnology. I think you know that China is working very hard on gene, let's say, gene modification, gene editing, and now the scientists are pushing for so-called breeding version 5, using digital AI, big data to really sequence the genes of all crops, all animals, and then try to optimize their breeding. So that the speed of the future breeding will be accelerated by 10 times, 20 times, maybe even faster. So this breeding of biotechnology is a second category. The third category is actually the integration of biotechnology, digital technology, AI. So for example, the breeding side, breeders are using AI. In the meantime, the digital revolution also consider the synthetic biotechnology. I think Hannah mentioned about alternative proteins, but China developed a national strategy to embrace that technology, alternative proteins. As you know, Chinese now are eating lots of red meat that cause lots of concerns, the supply side and also health side, and the climate change, obviously. So alternative protein can offer an alternative solutions. So the China is working very hard. The universities, agriculture research institutions, food research institutions, and the private sector, working with the global companies like Beyond Meat, like Impossible Burgers, the companies from Israel, from Singapore. So I think this synthetic sort of biotechnology has been used from production side, processing, and even in consumption. The last point I wanted to mention that the modern technologies can change the dietary behavior. That we have not focused so much. We always try to ask consumers to do this, to do that, but sometimes they don't listen. They may listen for you for a month or two. After 2 months, they will come back to their old consumption habit. But here in China, in my university, we are doing a very interesting experiment. So the university canteen installed AI buffet service. So basically, the students take the food from the buffet table, then the AI powered, so the plate can really measure the nutrition, the calorie, the energy intake, and also the carbon emissions. From each item, the students pick. So after students pick up 20 items, then the AI will be able to aggregate the total carbon emissions, total nutrition value, and also the money, obviously. And just by doing that, so disruptive technologies can cause disruptive behavior change. Otherwise, this sort of nudging, information sharing, all the things, can work, but work slowly. But this was disruptive technologies. I have seen that so students immediately cut down their waste by 20%, 30%. You even don't need to tell them because they know how much they pay for each item. Anyway, so I will stop over here. But it's truly an exciting moment right now, globally and in China. All this technology, whether biotechnology or digital AI technologies, or some of the private sector innovation practices, really give an opportunity for food system to be transformed. Better nutrition, better health, better environment, and help smallholders. Here I want to emphasize, smallholders, consumers must benefit from all these technologies. I stop here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Schengen. And I think you've said many different things here, and I want to thank you for being the first to bring up the issue of e-commerce and online trade. So the way we're trading is also very impacted by technology. And as you mentioned, $600 billion of agricultural products in China in 2023 were traded online. So that's very significant. But also you mentioned that what is particularly interesting is to watch how these different innovations synergize. So the cross between digital innovation and biotechnology, for instance, how all of this potential when combined can create an incredible amount of change and innovation. But also the idea of consumption habits and bringing AI to our plates. And as you said, disruptive technology creating disruptive behavioral change. So that's a very good quote to keep in mind going forward. Landry, let me turn to you. African agriculture holds immense potential, yet challenges such as post-harvest loss and the underutilization of fertilizers persist. What technological advancements are most urgently needed to unlock Africa's agriculture potential and enhance food security across the continent, in your view? A very big question, I realize.
No, thank you so much for asking this important question and for having me today. So I want to bring things in context first. So how what we like to call the fourth industrial revolution and emerging technologies can boost Africa agriculture and agribusiness. And as also highlighted by a previous speaker speaking about the interconnectedness of technologies, the fourth industrial revolution is characterized by the fusion of technologies blurring the frontier between the physical, the digital, and the biological world. So, and we have technologies which are also apply to agriculture, such as AI, blockchains, drone, big data, 3D printing, biotechnologies, among others. And I will come back later providing specific illustrations as to how they can really contribute to unlock Africa agricultural productivity and agri-industry in general. So a few points. So first, I want to highlight that we have some of the African countries are at the frontier of innovation. I take the illustration of Botswana, for example, which is partnering with eSpace Africa to forge ahead agricultural industry, leveraging eSpace, low Earth orbit, and smart Internet of Things application to gain real-time data, which will therefore help increase productivity. But despite the fact that some countries are really leading the way, so I also want to bring some element of context related to the challenges. For example, in recent years, you will see some countries such as Zambia who experienced its worst drought in 40 years in 2023, and Southern Africa in general received less than half of its typical rainfall at the beginning of 2024. So when we speak about food security, when you speak about agricultural productivity, extreme weathers in countries such as Sudan, South Sudan, or recurring crop diseases, inadequate infrastructure, they really make the need of adopting technologies at the frontier of innovation critical. So of course we have the broader productivity question, but we also have climate implications which make the productivity even more complex. And beyond those questions of climate change and productivity, so it's also important to highlight the fact that 1 in 5 people in Africa face hunger in 2023, compared to 1 in 11 people in the world. And by 2030 also, Africa will be home to 1/5 of the world population. By 2050, to about 25% of the world population. And by the end of the century, about up to 40% of the world population. But if you just keep this by 2030, so the FAO estimates that if the current trends continue, Africa will be home to half of the world, almost 600 million chronically undernourished people. So similarly to what was mentioned about China, so Africa currently imports about 55 billion worth of food annually, which could double to about 110 billion by 2030 if the agricultural productivities remain the same, which is a little bit a paradox, as Africa is home to more than 60% of the world unused arable land. And whether we speak about the consumer spending or household consumption, food and beverage is the largest space for spending in Africa in terms of household spending or consumer spending. But also when you speak about business to business spending, it is also the largest sector of expense agriculture and agri processing. So those are extremely important. But the reason why we are very hopeful is really related to the transformational potential and impact of the fourth industrial revolution, as I mentioned, with technology, of course, artificial intelligence, which can play a powerful role in Africa's agricultural industry, from identifying diseases and pests and reducing costs to analyzing the most efficient ways to allocate resources, including water, fertilizers, among others. So we also have the combined, especially with drone technology. AI can also help farmers scan vast amounts of land to compile aggregate big data that can be analyzed using whether artificial intelligence or the Internet of Things, all of which can reduce the cost and inputs while minimizing yields. So I can provide many examples. The South African startup called, for example, iRobotics, which allow farmers to receive personalized assistance for optimizing resources and reducing cost. Or in Botswana, a deep learning AgTech solution also, for example, using drone, satellites, and cameras, to identify pests, detect diseases, or predict soil and organic carbons levels. So again, so here we have numerous illustration. Let me share the Third Eye project in Foresight, Africa 2025, 2030, the Brookings flagship publication. We have also identified many of the such technology. When you speak about the cassava disease surveillance platform in Nigeria, supported by IITA, and helping really the farmers to increase productivities. So we can expand extensively when discussing about those technology, but I have already mentioned AI and machine learning, drone, big data, 3D printing, blockchains are all technologies which could be used. I have many more examples. I'll be happy to provide them during the conversation. But perhaps a way I want to finish this is to focus on the policies and whether trade policies, but also investment which are needed to unlock the agricultural development and the adoption also of technologies. And here too, in my most recent, not my most recent book, the second to latest one, Africa's fourth industrial revolution, I also look at how those technology could be used. What are some of the opportunities, barriers, challenges, and what are the countries which are leading the way in improving the adoption of technology, the increase of productivity. And before even doing a deep dive on some of the recommendations, I want to emphasize the fact that here at the Brookings Institution, we call to further highlight the importance of technologies, they are the industry without smokestacks, which are not limited, but include agri-industry, agri-processing, among others, so which are considered as Africa's alternative path for development. And this because when people look at traditional manufacturing, they would say that Africa may be deindustrializing. But when we look at industry without smokestacks, we can see that exports in those industries have grown about 6 times faster than export in traditional manufacturing. And this is because and those industries are important also, including agri-industry, agri-processing, because they share similar characteristics like traditional manufacturing. For example, the tradability, the exportability of the products, the relatively higher productivity as well, which is very important for development, including to ensure food security, but also they absorb a relatively high quantity of moderately skilled workers. So that's why those characteristics are really important. And high informality in the sector and high rates of small-scale farming make coordinating policy and program difficult. But the reason why technology are important, they are not just helping increasing productivity and profitability, competitiveness, but they are also helping increasing earnings, especially for small farm holders. At the micro level and at the macro level, they help really boosting structural transformation and ensuring economic development. So forward-looking government strategy should really invest in key emerging technologies, enablers, and complement infrastructure such as public agricultural research and development, and support also regulatory framework which are pro-industry. So it is also really important, I think a key dimension is human capital. For African countries to really cultivate the human capital needed to drive this solution and scale at the continent, at the national or continental level, promoting also collaborative research among others, the facilitation of partnership between government technology companies, farmer to promote AI integration, emerging technology integration, whether through innovation hubs or training and connection for farmers is also extremely important. So again, I can expand. As you can see, I'm very excited when it comes to speak about those technologies, but I will stop now so to allow the conversation to continue.
Thank you very much, Landry, for this fantastic overview of the situation in Africa. As you mentioned, in countries like Zambia, South Africa, etc., the water shortage is very severe, and there needs we need solutions for this. Technology has to be able to allow agriculture to continue under those very difficult extreme weather conditions. You've also mentioned population growth in Africa, of course, one of the fastest growing continents. In 2050, 25% of world population will be African, with the paradox, as you mentioned, of 60% of the world's arable land being in Africa. And therefore, we absolutely need to find solutions to allow Africa to have food security. And to apply new and innovative technologies to its agriculture. And as you mentioned, of course, a good trade and investment environment is key to unlocking Africa's potential. So with that, let me come to you, Shir. You are the representative of Israel on this panel, and Israel is often dubbed the startup nation. What set of domestic policies are needed to allow startups to take off, including on the trade policy side? In other words, what was Israel's recipe?
Thank you very much, Noah. So as you've mentioned, I will answer the question from our perspective and experience as a country that mainly exported citrus until late 80s and is now being referred to as the startup nation. So at the outset, I would like to emphasize that the Israeli innovation on AgTech came from a necessity. Most of Israel's land is actually a desert, and in order to survive, we had to find solutions to scarcity in water and develop smart agriculture. Now, I would like to mention some figures to demonstrate what the term startup nation actually means and what makes the Israeli ecosystem so unique for innovation. So to date, there are 7,000 Israeli startups. By the way, 10% of them are AgTech and food tech startups. And this number ranks us first in the world in terms of startups per capita. Israel is positioned at the forefront of precision agriculture, smart irrigation, desalination, water treatment, food technologies, and more. As of 2022, we are first in the world in R&D investments as percentage of GDP. And the tech sector in Israel represents 12% of the Israeli workforce, 20% of our GDP, and 53% of our total annual exports. So how did we create this ecosystem? What set of policies were needed? So I'll divide my answer between structural reforms in our economy and policy tools aimed at fostering innovation. Starting with the structural reforms. Back in the late 80s, the Israeli economy underwent major structural reforms that were a result of a severe economic crisis, which included inflation of 400%, mounting debt, foreign currency liquidity problems, and more. These reforms were crucial for Israel's economy and laid the foundation to what we call today the startup nation. The main reform started in 1991 was what we call the exposure program. So this program significantly reduced custom tariffs and other trade barriers in order to open the Israeli market to imports. It marked the change from a protectionist market to a free trade market, and this pivotal shift contributed significantly to Israel's economic development and its ability to compete in global markets. In the following years, the Israeli market saw a sharp increase in imports, exports, and foreign direct investment. Throughout the years since then, Israel has been constantly working on reducing regulatory barriers. Last year, for example, we started to implement the most comprehensive import reform, which focuses on drastically reducing regulatory barriers, eliminating bureaucracy, and lowering import costs. So in parallel to these structural economic reforms, Israel started to create its ecosystem for innovation in early 90s with a few important instruments. First, there was the Yozma program, initiated by the government in 1993 to support the emergence of a venture capital ecosystem. This program triggered the creation of the venture capital ecosystem in Israel, which was strongly related to the development of the tech industry. As we all know, startups need funding. Second, Israel established a unique independent statutory authority, the Innovation Authority. The authority played and still plays a critical role in the ecosystem for innovation in Israel. It encourages technological entrepreneurship and industrial R&D, regularly analyzes the markets, identifies untapped potential and research trends, and reduces barriers to innovation in general. It is flexible and responds to the changing needs of the innovation ecosystem. For example, during COVID-19 pandemic, it created new programs to help companies, to help startups to overcome these difficulties. Thirdly, the academic institutions in Israel are also engaged in cutting-edge research that lead to new technologies and spin-off companies. In fact, Israeli universities typically have what we call technology transfer offices, TTOs, which are unique, really unique. There aren't a lot of these models in the world. They are unique and dedicated. They are special units within the universities that facilitates the commercialization of academic research and innovations. Their primary role is to bridge the gap between academic discoveries and their practical application in the marketplace. Israeli TTOs have gained international recognition for their effectiveness. As for instance, the Weizmann Institute's TTO was ranked among the most profitable globally. To summarize, Israel's regulatory framework and policy tools are designed to support innovation with a focus on reducing bureaucratic hurdles, providing startups with an environment conducive to tech innovation, and facilitating foreign direct investment, which is very important. The funding is crucial. One of these tools is also to attract multinational corporations to Israel to open R&D centers. And actually, we have more than 400 such centers today. I have much more to say, but in the interest of time, I will conclude here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Shir. So indeed, there was a pivotal shift with the opening up of the Israeli economy that has allowed the startup nation to rise. A reduction of the regulatory barriers, import-export restrictions, reduction of bureaucracy, you've said, that has created an innovation ecosystem, in addition to this very interesting and one-of-a-kind approach, of course, of establishing technology offices or units within universities to facilitate the commercialization of research. Fantastic. Thank you very, very much. So without further ado, let me come to the second round of questions. Adam, I'll come back to you. The IFC has been instrumental in financing projects in developing countries. Given that global agricultural trade has reached 2 trillion in 2024 and the trade in AgTech is rising, how can international financing institutions better support cross-border trade and investment in AgTech? Are there examples of successful financing models that can be scaled?
So I think here, for part of my answer, I want to draw attention to the intersection or overlap between AgTech and climate tech. And this has to do with the fact that, when we remember that the agri-food system as a whole contributes about 1/3 of global greenhouse gas emissions, you can see that it's not only a big issue as a generator of greenhouse gas emissions, but when you consider also that our food system relies on agricultural resilience, mitigation efforts, and adaptation efforts, and how sensitive, for example, food prices have become as an issue globally. You can see that there's a need and there's this overlap between climate and AgTechs that is going to help, and AgTech is going to help break some of this cycle of the heavy contributions to greenhouse gas emissions that the agri-food systems contribute. So let's just consider, what we're even talking about when we're talking about AgTech. We're talking about, value proposition to farmers and their suppliers around increasing efficiency, lowering resource intensity. In other words, being able to grow more with less, whether that may be fewer hectares or using lower percentage of fertilizers for the same yield, or agrochemicals. And so these are outcomes that naturally correlate very nicely to having a positive impact when it comes to climate mitigation efforts. But despite all of this intersection between climate and the agri-food system, one of the biggest challenges from the financing perspective is only about 4% of climate finance goes into agriculture. So responsible for a third of all emissions. We as a population depend on the agri-food system and its reliance or reliability and resilience, and yet only 4% of climate finance. I think the imbalances, or why is there such an imbalance? I mean, it has to do with the fragmentation of agriculture, and smallholder farmers are an important part of this fragmentation or dispersion. And this is where some of the models I mentioned in my reply to the first question are important. These models, which help pool finance, leverage technologies to lower the unit cost of reaching smallholder farmers and increase the accuracy and underwriting of the risk that financiers would take to smallholder farmers. And of course, this is not only necessary for their annual purchases of ag inputs, but also in the context of being able to invest in technologies will help make farms more resilient to climate change. Then the other obstacle to unlocking more climate finance is being undone by AgTech itself. So what do I mean by that? It's the simple fact that, historically, in the history, relatively recent history we've had around quantifying greenhouse gas emissions and monitoring them with precision. I mean, that's all relatively easily done if you're talking about a wind farm or a solar farm. When it comes to a farm in the original meaning of the word, the challenges of quantifying emissions and are connected to the variability of biological systems, the vagaries of GHG residency in soils. And this has really hampered the first wave of efforts to drive mitigation of GHG emissions connected to farming. And so that was what was making it difficult for climate finance. But we're standing at the verge of a lot of the AgTech that's being developed is around making it possible to monitor and quantify these GHGs much better. So whether it means, for example, AI models around soil carbon modeling, or whether it's remote sensing, you can monitor much better going forward the GHGs or avoided GHGs associated with farming. And this is going to also help unlock some of the climate finance to help address some of these issues in the agricultural sector. So working with its development partners, IFC is ready to help its private sector clients look at ways of improving the sustainability of their agribusiness operations in emerging markets. And we are looking at investments where there's both a business logic and there are positive and significant externalities that can be scaled. And that's where we're going to be working with our clients at looking at solutions to finance those. And once again, it could be leveraging some of the models I gave in my first answer. But this is where we're going forward in terms of that two-pronged approach of generating, helping generate the technology through our investments in the AgTech space, and then helping finance its adoption in emerging markets for those technologies that have emerged and are being adopted by the clients we have in the agri-production space. So with that, I'll hand back the floor.
Thank you very much for that, and thank you for the focus on climate finance, clearly a very important issue. Hadar, let me come to you. Considering that startups face regulatory and tariff barriers when entering new markets, how can trade policy facilitate the seamless movement of agricultural innovations across borders? For example, can mutual recognition agreements on standards play a role?
Wow, that's a great question, especially since the ecosystem so far was so difficult for so many startups, not only the funding environment, but also the complexity of the regulatory barriers, especially with innovations. So startups in the agri-food tech are really, really critical drivers of innovation. This is what we all discussed here, also in emerging markets and other drivers. But these are the critical drivers of innovation. Yet they often, as you said, struggle with regulatory fragmentation, with complex approval processes, tariff barriers, and especially when trying to scale up internationally, that's where you encounter the barrier in its full power, and it becomes something that holds startups back. So coming back to your question, to facilitate these seamless agricultural innovations across the borders, indeed, trade policy should focus on three key areas to my understanding. First of all, harmonization. Second, mutual recognition. Yes. So the answer is yes. And the third, I mean, it goes without saying, but all of us are expecting regulatory agility. So first, mutual recognition agreements on standards can play a pivotal role by allowing regulatory approval in one jurisdiction to be recognized in others, reducing duplication or expediting market entry. This is particularly crucial for innovators in the fields of biologicals, in the fields of alternative proteins, in even precision agriculture, where all the lengthy regulatory processes can hinder and can draw back the commercialization efforts. Secondly, trade policies should encourage greater harmonization for safety and sustainability standards through multilateral cooperation. What do I mean by saying that? I mean that predictable and science-based regulatory landscape can reduce the uncertainty for startups, okay? We need to put on the lens of startup to understand in what level of high uncertainty startups and innovators live. This is a different kind of momentums that all of us corporates and banks and investors, we do not have this momentum of uncertainty, but startups, they're trying to really make it to global expansion and become more viable. So yes, trade policies should encourage more harmonization. And finally, all of us, and especially regulatory bodies, we need more agile and more adaptive regulatory frameworks that will evolve alongside these emerging technologies. So implementing risk-based, data-driven approaches, such as digital regulatory sandboxes, can really accelerate approvals without compromising safety. So we don't want to compromise safety. This is not what I'm saying, but I'm just saying let's be more agile in the framework that we implement for startups. Let me give you an example, okay? Because I spoke about the three maybe pillars that I mean, and indeed recognition or standardization is key. But let's take, for example, microbial products, okay? And this I've learned in the hard way how difficult it is to roll out one microbial product from one geography to another geography. It's a hurdle that you can't imagine. And we have in our portfolio AI-driven startups that are developing microbial products for more sustainable agriculture, but yet it's very difficult to do all the path of regulatory hurdles. And this is where also us as a corporate investor come and lean into the process with our experience, with our global reach, in order to facilitate that very, very hard way that the startups need to go. So if we take, for instance, these microbial products for agriculture as an example, these products can be biofertilizers, biostimulants, biopesticides, and they offer a sustainable alternative for conventional chemicals. Let's not forget that. These products are the next generation to bring in the better practices into our evolving transformation of the whole food system. However, the regulatory approval of microbial solutions varies significantly across all countries. So a strain can be approved for use in one market, may require an extensive retesting and re-registration elsewhere. So this all becomes delay of all the commercialization effort and increasing the costs for a young startup. It's very difficult. So coming back to your question about mutual recognition agreements, for sure, let's say on safety and efficacy standards, this could help a lot to overcome, for startup to overcome all this challenge, because if a microbial biostimulant meets those stringent requirements in one regulatory system, other countries with equivalent safety standards could actually accept those approval, reducing redundant assessments more over and over again. Also, trade policies should promote greater regulatory harmonization if we are talking about microbials, by encouraging this alignment on science-based standards for microbial products. Then a more predictable and more transparent regulatory landscape would provide the startup with a very clear view or a clearer pathway to market. And again, reducing uncertainties, accelerating global adoption for sustainable AgTech solutions. And lastly, we need an adaptive regulatory framework. So especially for microbial, let's say, such as a risk-based assessment model or digital regulatory sandboxes, as I said before, this would for sure fast-track approval for all the microbial innovations that are coming without compromising the safety of these products. I have more examples from, let's say, cultured meat, etc. You know, it's very, sometimes the innovation is too far ahead from the regulatory body. And what we are trying to achieve here, and these are the three solutions that I suggested, are trying to just align the fast pace of the innovation with the slow movement of the regulatory bodies and create some kind of an harmonization.
Thank you very much, Hadar. Basically, as you mentioned, we really need to put on the lens of startups and to see how, from their perspective, it's all about the reduction of uncertainty. And so thank you for using a term that we don't yet use in the WTO, which is that of regulatory agility, but maybe it will come to the WTO at some point. But that's really needed because the regulator needs to keep up with the pace of innovation. And I think that's what's at the core of your message here. Shagan, I'd like to come back to you. As you mentioned in AgTech, it's a leader in precision agricultural technologies such as smart irrigation systems and AI-driven crop monitoring and so on. To what extent is China sharing this technological advancement with the rest of the world? And are there any specific examples of partnerships or exports where these innovations are making a significant impact?
Well, China shares these technologies of information innovations with other countries through mainly three channels. The number one is through international organizations like CGIAR, FAO, IFAD, WFP, and so on. As you know, China has worked with CGIAR, with FAO, with IFAD, where Doha you have worked with, through trust funds, through various platforms. For example, Chinese Academy of Agricultural Sciences and FAO have set up a technology sharing platform. That platform provides knowledge information, best know-how technologies with partners in Africa, in South Asia, Southeast Asia. Now, CGIAR, as you know, CGIAR have worked with China for the last 3 or 4 decades. We are sharing technologies, particularly sharing technology with Africa. Now, the second channel is through a Belt Road initiatives. Not just the innovation knowledge, but also the trade and foreign direct investment. So using all this to help the countries along the Belt Road to persuade these countries to adopt initially high efficient productive technologies, but now more and more green, sustainable, and healthy, nutritious foods production. And just on that, China has worked with Africa in setting up mass agriculture demonstration centers, initially try to promote high productivity, self-sufficiency in these countries. But I think more needs to be done to work also on sustainability, green development, particularly climate adaptation mitigation, and to make sure that the smallholders and the poor consumers will be able to access to healthy and nutritious foods. Then the South-South cooperation, it's not just Africa, with South Asia, Southeast Asia. Again, through trade, through investment, through technology sharing. I think so this country will benefit. China actually will also benefit. China could diversify its food imports from these countries. As you know, as you said rightly, Doha, China is the largest food importer. But how can China diversify its imports, to make sure that not too dependent on certain countries because of climate or geopolitical risks. On the other hand, also help the developing countries to grow, to provide a more alternative China to access the market. Then I think some of the technologies have already mentioned. So AI-powered crop monitoring, mechanizations, particularly small machines that are more sort of suitable for Africans, the value chain development, particularly processing, cassava processing, rice processing, and e-commerce, obviously, e-commerce. I think one proposal I have is, in Africa, actually, most of the cell phones are made by Chinese companies. I'm wondering whether these cell phones can embed some of the AI tools with the content on food and agriculture. So when the smallholders have the cell phone, they can access to knowledge information about the technology, about the weather, about the market, and as you know, very cost effective. So that's something I think China can do better using cell phones to embed the technologies information there. So finally, I just wanted to mention that in Beijing, every year in October, we organize a big global gathering called World Agri Innovation Forum. So 2013, 2014, always in October, we attracted 5,000 in-person participants and more than 106 million online viewers. So 160 million. So there's no mistake, 160 million online viewers. I think the participants from different communities, science communities, business, NGOs, the policymakers, United Nations, and so on. So this year, we will continue to host this global gathering, October 12 to 15. I really hope some of the participants can come to the conference. So basically to share the knowledge, information, technologies. One of the distinguished feature is we have a very large exhibitions from the private sector with focus on agricultural food innovations. So global, national innovation companies, including alternative proteins. So we had, as a result of it, two years meeting, the Beijing city has established consortium for alternative protein industry. So the Beijing city wanted to use its science technology to promote the Beijing as a base for alternative proteins. So it's truly very exciting. I really hope, really looking forward to more participants to this group. So yes, sharing technologies with other countries. Thank you, Dua.
Thank you very much, Shengyan, for this. So clearly, China does share technology and know-how with other countries through a number of different avenues, one of which is the multilateral avenue, CGIAR, FAO, WFP, as you mentioned, but also infrastructure projects and foreign direct investment. And you've also spoken about this important Agri-Innovation Forum that China holds every October. So thank you very much for this. Landry, I'd like to turn to you, and in light of time, I'd like you to be brief. African countries face high tariff and non-tariff barriers in trading in agricultural products and technologies. With intra-African trade representing less than 20% of the continent's total trade, how can the African Continental Free Trade Area be leveraged to enhance the dissemination of AgTech?
Yeah, no, that's an extremely important question. I think we have many tools which could be used. The first one that I want to highlight is really the African Continental Free Trade Area digital protocols aiming at removing trade barriers when it comes to emerging technology and to digital trade. And this also will be inclusive of data governance, cross-border data flow, emerging technology, cybersecurity, consumer protections, among others. So that is one key dimension. So how to promote really common standards and open rules, support digital infrastructure to unlock digital trade. Here too, I want to emphasize the fact that when African countries trade with one another, about over 40% of the products are added value products compared to when they trade typically with the rest of the world, about 16, 17, depending on the years, will be transformed products. So it's also that value which is created through trading when African countries trade with one another. So a key dimension here is to how do you accelerate the implementation of the African Continental Free Trade Area and on the digital trade protocol so that countries, but also smallholder farmers could benefit from this measure. And let me probably finish with a couple of quick points. I know in the interest of time, the first one is to bridge the gap between all the incredible protocols which were designed and annexes and the implementation outcomes. So that's the first dimension. And the second dimension was also highlighted before is the imperative of agility. And let me explain the context. Agile governance or agile regulation in general is critical to address a couple of challenges. The first challenge is the pacing challenge, and the second challenge is the coordination challenge. For the pacing challenge, it is the gap between technological innovation adoption, either between the global north, the global south, or even within the continent of Africa, or the gap also between some specific region within the continent. So that gap need to be addressed. And the second one is the coordination, the multiplicity of actors, given the complexity, the decentralized nature also of innovation. And as was mentioned, China, for example, has numerous technologies which are adapted for the continent of Africa. So how do we bridge that gap by managing or addressing the pace, the speed, and by coordinating with with a variety of actors to ensure that when you speak about coordinating actor, whether you speak about the infrastructure, do we have the proper infrastructure? Do we have the proper government regulation? Do we have the proper financing? And do we have the agility to also accelerate and to implement? Do we have the trade facility? And are we removing the barriers to digital trade among others? I can't overly expand again here, but I think in the interest of time, I will stop.
Thank you very much, and indeed some very important points. Again, the word agility has come up a second time. Again, very important for Africa to be agile in terms of pacing and in terms of coordination, given the decentralized nature of innovation, and to allow things to move from the global north to the global south. Shir, I'd like to come back to you. With Israel being a leader in precision agriculture and water-saving technologies, how can the WTO best support the dissemination of AgTech globally, in your view? Can you walk us through the parts of the WTO rulebook that you see as most relevant, or even ongoing negotiations that may be relevant to this?
Sure. So indeed, Israeli agricultural technologies are used across the globe, from India to California, and this demonstrates the pivotal role of trade and the rules that support it. DG Ngozi, in her opening remarks at the 13th Ministerial Conference, said that the trade remains critical to delivering on many national and global priorities by boosting growth, expanding economic opportunities, solving collective action problems such as climate change. I definitely agree with this, and in my view, better and more trade is the most effective tool to support the dissemination of agricultural technologies globally. And turning to the WTO rulebook, I think the entire rulebook more or less plays a role, whether it is market access, trading services, agriculture, or the rules under which we govern intellectual property rights. But what stands out are the non-tariff barriers. Under this umbrella, we have standards which, depending on the nature of the regulation, could either facilitate trade, make it more expensive, or block it altogether. Another aspect is import licensing procedures, which again can facilitate or make it near impossible to enter certain markets. In this context, the implementation of both the agreement on the application of sanitary and phytosanitary measures and the agreement on technical barriers to trade is critical. Both agreements aim to ensure that technical regulations, standards, and conformity assessment procedures are non-discriminatory and do not create unnecessary obstacles to trade. At the 12th Ministerial Conference, ministers adopted the SPS Declaration responding to modern SPS challenges. It recognizes that new opportunities and emerging challenges have been brought about by the evolution of the global agricultural landscape since the adoption of the SPS agreement in 1995. The declaration instructs the SPS committee to carry out a work program to further manage the issues. On TBT, for example, and in general at the WTO, we start to see lately informal discussions on AI regulation. Just to give an example, this is a very relevant topic for AgTech, as Hadar also mentioned before, and it's in the interest of all countries to discuss this topic in order to promote regulatory framework that enables innovation and does not block it. And of course, not only goods are affected, but also barriers to trade in services. We know that some of the technologies blur the line between what is a good and what is a service. But at the WTO, we have two different agreements and separate disciplines for goods and services. We have the General Agreement on Tariff and Trade for goods and the General Agreement on Trade and Services for services. This, of course, makes it more difficult to ensure that the standards and technical regulations governing these new technologies when they enter markets are aligned between members and act to facilitate safe and smooth trade rather than barriers to trade. We will have to think how we bridge this gap at the WTO rather than continue to work in silos. And another relevant agreement is, of course, the agreement on agriculture, which provides for framework to trade in all agricultural products. It includes special rules on supporting agricultural research, training and advisory services, and environmental programs. And moving to current negotiations, although the agricultural negotiations mainly focus on subsidization, market access, PSH, export restrictions, and the other traditional agricultural pillars, the membership recognized the importance of making progress on contemporary topics such as food security and now also sustainable agriculture, on which we will have our first discussion this spring. It is yet to be seen how these deliberations will progress, but for us, it is quite clear that AgTech should be one of the key components in achieving sustainable agriculture. And of course, last Lastly, we cannot speak about technology, any kind of technology, without mentioning the moratorium on electronic transmissions that has been extended in MC13. The work program on e-commerce is examining trade-related issues arising from digital trade, and the work is still ongoing. In addition, the plurilateral negotiations on the joint statement initiative on e-commerce and the stabilized text we have reached to a few months ago can help to facilitate the integration of technology across borders and support a more stable business environment to adapt growing digital trade. Since AgTech solutions, especially precision agriculture, rely heavily on digital components, this agreement can be a good basis as it strengthens the rules-based trading system by establishing the first ever set of global baseline rules on digital trade. Of course, there are more relevant agreements, as I mentioned in the beginning, but we have no time, so I'll conclude here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Shir, for this comprehensive overview. So clearly the entire WTO rulebook is relevant, but you have very rightly put the focus on NTBs, non-tariff barriers, and emphasized the importance of not having the WTO work in silos. And thank you for also mentioning the moratorium on e-commerce. In light of time, we have many questions from viewers, but in light of time, I'll just take two from viewers. The first is for Adam, and it comes from the Commonwealth Secretariat. I'll read it. For the past 10 years, I've seen all kinds of investments in digital tech and solutions and platforms across Africa, the Caribbean, and Pacific countries for smallholder agriculture. But the challenges of these farmers remain unsurmountable with the issues of scale and sustainability of these technologies and services. I've come to the conclusion, he says, that it is less the digital technologies and services and more the data. Any plans for IFC to explore and invest in the foundation for these platforms and technology to allow them to better function? So basically, what is IFC doing on data, he is asking.
Yeah, and I think also here, part of that question is around data for finance decisions by financial intermediaries, if I understood the gist of the question well. And yeah, no, it's been a tough slog in terms of being able to make sure. I mean, you know, I think when you look at the evolution of technology, there was a period in which the assumption was build the app and the farmer will come, and then sort of the realization that not in all markets, and especially some of those tough markets that I think are the focus of this question, will everyone have a smartphone? That data connections are so weak. But we do see it as a whole ecosystem. So, for example, as we know, I've been working in the agribusiness space, but I've got colleagues that work in the infrastructure space. And so there we're building out the data. In terms of building out the data connectivity, right? So in terms of building data, gathering data, it is this whole iterative process of having that capillarity of being able to understand patterns one season after the next for what the farmer is doing, being able to anticipate those needs. So it does take a couple of crop cycles of connectivity in a given region to be able to build or put together the pattern that's necessary to be more proactive in technological interventions. So it's a process. It takes time. It needs a whole ecosystem to come together. So not just simply doing something with the data, but that front end of being able to collect the data initially, and of course the distribution and connection to the farmer as you can add value to operations from having analyzed the data.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Shir, a question to you, a complicated but very interesting question that comes to you from an Indian viewer who is saying you have described a pivotal moment in Israel's agricultural development where Israel opted for free trade and more open markets and a more open investment environment. How did you build the national consensus to get there, and did farmers not oppose?
Well, as I said, it was the late 80s and the beginning of the 90s. Israel went through, undergone a major economic crisis. So the public understood there is no other choice. It's either we do it, and it won't be easy because our domestic industries had to accept the fact that they will have competition from imported products, but on the other hand, it made them more competitive, they developed more innovation and excellency, and this is eventually what helped them to succeed in global markets. So in the beginning, I think that if you communicate these benefits to the domestic producers and the domestic industry, if you communicate it right in the right way, and if this is I see it as the only path for development, for economic development. You cannot close your market and expect to have economic growth. So we have to pay certain price for opening our markets and for being more developed. And this, again, politicians, they know how to communicate it, but and I'm sure that also in India, but I believe that if you communicate the benefits to the public and to the companies, eventually it can help. This is what helped in our case.
We are exactly on time, and I think that that's a very important closing message, Shir, that indeed, opening trade, the opening of trade and the opening of markets can actually strengthen farmers and strengthen global agriculture. So that's a good message also for us to end with. I'd like to thank each and every one of you for your fantastic contributions. I think we've learned a lot through this webinar, and I just want to apologize to viewers whose questions we did not get to, but we will continue to explore the issue of AgTech in future trade dialogues on food. So do stay with us for other episodes of this program. Thank you very, very much once again to all of you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Goodbye.
Bye. Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
Thank you. Bye.